Chris Nicholson moved around a lot as a kid. He wasn't an army brat. His family just had a habit of building houses, selling them, and moving along. It probably wasn't easy to shift schools all the time, especially middle school, but it sure helped him learn to adapt and become good at meeting new people. After a long stint at Humana, Chris led the spin-out of mPulse Mobile as founder and CEO. The company tailors patient engagement to the individual, leveraging conversational AI, behavioral change models, and educational content. The last couple of years underlined the value of this approach as behavioral health needs increased and people embraced convenient digital solutions. Chris and his family are active volunteers in the community. That spirit pervades the company culture as well. And conveniently, work from home has meant mPulse offices could be used as storage facilities for donations to families in need. I'm David Williams, host of the HealthBiz podcast and president of Health Business Group, a strategy consulting firm that helps companies like mPulse Mobile develop robust growth plans. Reach out to me, dwilliams@healthbusinessgroup.com, if you'd like to discuss strategy for your own company. And while you're at it, please subscribe to the HealthBiz podcast on your favorite service. Chris Nicholson, CEO and co-founder of mPulse Mobile. Welcome to the HealthBiz podcast.
Hello, David. How are you today?
I am doing great, and it's wonderful to have you here. Love what your company is doing. Very relevant for these times. But let's talk about how you got there first. And first, we'll start with I'm not a child psychologist or anything, but what was your childhood like? Any big influences that stuck with you from way back?
I appreciate it. I think probably the one, most relevant, I think for me, when I tell people this, they're always so surprised, is how many times I moved around as a child. So not a military family whatsoever, as people typically think of like a military family moving every few years. But my grandfather and my dad built homes on the side. And so we'd build a house. We would basically, plant the grass, as soon as the yard turned green, you put a for sale sign in it, you move again, you do the whole thing again and again. And now I've been married 20 years, and my wife and I have even been in 9 different homes over the 20 years that we've been married. And so that has continued to stick with me. And so, when people typically say, where are you from? It's kind of a long answer to do that. But I think it's created a lot of agility for me, I think, in my family, and being able to pick up and make new friends and meet new people, and just sort of where we are is home, wherever that happens to be. So
that sounds like it may be like almost a genetic thing if you have it as well. Do you think that your folks, when you were growing up, had it sort of, they're doing that on the side, but maybe it was for your own development that they wanted to move you around and make sure that you were able to handle any environment?
It could be, right? Acclimating into new schools, right? And, 2 different, middle schools, different high school, like all those things through the course of it. And then, and I think it was great. I mean, probably one of the things that's made me successful, I think, as a CEO is the ability to, make new friends and sort of meet new people wherever I'm at. So I love conferences. I love big events where there's lots of strangers, which is just more people to meet.
Great. Excellent. And then once you got out of the house or houses or whatever, what did you do in terms of pursuing your education?
Yeah, so I stayed really Midwest. And so I grew up in Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, Ohio area, undergrad and master's degree, all in the Midwest at the University of Louisville in their entrepreneurial program. And love that area. And that, afforded me the ability to connect with a lot of, technology and healthcare related companies through Nashville, Louisville, Kentucky, and Cincinnati that I travel a lot for work, running some businesses in Chicago, New York, Dallas, California. And so it gave me the ability to sort of still be connected across the US, but to have that home base, it was pretty central.
No, that's good. Now, I noticed you had a few jobs for a little while before you took a longer stint at Humana. What were those first jobs like, sort of getting on your feet? What was that about?
Yeah. So I worked way back when at Alamo Rent-A-Car, right, in sales, and the guy at the counter that was trying to sell you insurance and gas, right?
Sure.
And so that, again, sort of follows suit to meet lots of people and be as friendly as possible. And then, moved into really more of the technology space. And so I worked at some tech startups like Lightyear Communications, that was a reseller for MCI WorldCom and some of the largest players at the time. Shortly thereafter moved to Verizon on the wireless and mobile technology end, and then spent, as you said, that 15-year stint at Humana. And I ran their communications practice, their consulting practice. And then the last role there was the chief operating officer for the health and wellness division. And that was really, I think, part of the impetus to sort of lead to, creating, mPulse. And so I'm happy to talk more about that if you like.
No, that sounds good. I mean, I noticed even in those sort of first ones, it looked like there was sort of a communications and wireless and wellness component to it. So there's a bit of a through line there somewhere. So yeah, love to hear a little bit about the kind of the Humana experience. Obviously a big organization, but also known for doing some pretty innovative things as well.
They really are.
Yeah.
And when I started there, I was working at one of the technology companies, and a recruiter called me from Humana, and I don't remember even how old I was at the time. And the recruiter, basically was telling me about this job, and they were said, Humana's, building this innovation center, and we want to interview you to come in this innovation group. And I said, well, the last time I've been to the doctor was probably like 7 years ago, right? You've got that sort of mid 20,
Yeah.
30-year-old invincible male, right? That's never sick or has anything. And so I said, I know absolutely nothing about healthcare. And she was great. The recruiter said, that's the kind of people we want. They said, we have, 8,000 people that know everything about healthcare. We don't have anybody that doesn't. And so it was really cool that they thought innovatively to bring people in from sort of outside of that circle to build that team. And so, they tested and developed new health plans, new forms of communication strategies, developing new ways to sort of to service, consumers. And that's what led me really to this work with mPulse, was that, we were really reaching out. We were spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year, hundreds of millions of dollars a year in outbound print and mail and letters and postcards and statements that we never received any feedback from.
Right.
And so we basically dropped it in, and we just sort of, would pray, that people would, follow through on those preventive services and screenings, and then look at some results at sort of marginal 1 or 2% influence. And so that was the driver that said, hey, I've got some background in mobile communications and technology. What can we do in the market, to sort of bring those services in? And instead of sort of building in-house, said, let's go start something externally and develop that as a new company and new product.
That sounds good. So when you started Impulse, was there any sort of tie to Humana? Were they involved in it? Have they been a customer, a partner along the way, or what was that transition like?
Yeah, one of the first customers actually. And so the way that we did the journey was actually a company that was already in the space that we brought in to do some mobile communications and some pilots that was doing messaging for restaurants and nightclubs and hotels, and really sort of engaging in the consumer and retail space. And then I was actually put on the advisory board for that particular company for about a year and a half, and really started to learn that, bringing them into the healthcare fold. And I think, as you know more than anybody, healthcare communications and healthcare engagement is very different than retail.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to do with these words like HIPAA and compliance and SOC 2
Yeah.
and high trust and everything else, right? And so, really then, the board said, hey, do you want to, spin this out and actually create a new company dedicated to just healthcare? So it was a perfect combination, perfect timing in the organization. And I saw Humana grow. I think, from a background perspective, when I started, Humana was 8,000 employees. And when I left, they were 58,000 employees.
Yeah.
And so some massive growth and change. And I think for me, I just took every opportunity in front of me that was new to basically, they said, hey, we've got a new division opening up. And I'll say, I'll do that. Hey, we've got a new product launching. I'm like, hey, I'll do that. And sort of moving through the business that made it really, really fruitful experience.
Now, when I look at your site and get an understanding of your offering, I'm seeing at least three main components there, and you can maybe correct me or give it a little more explanation here. One is definitely AI, that is emphasized strongly, and also behavior change models and education. And are those the right components? And how do those things fit together?
Yeah. We look at the framework in sort of four ways, right? And one is conversation, which is around conversational AI and engagement, and basically just saying we're easy to talk to, we're easy to engage. Meaning, as an example, David, I may be engaging you to talk about a medication adherence or refill reminder. And you say, well, I can't afford it this month, or I lost my job, or my car broke down and I just can't get there, right? And so we're gathering these insights and sort of building the conversation, the dialogue. The second piece of that is what we refer to as knowledge, is that when we learn something about a barrier, then we say, well, how can we educate you? Can we connect you to lower cost alternatives? Can we connect you to, maybe transportation support or other things that can help you manage that particular condition in a better way? And then we have the pillar, which is focused on the journeys. And so we're mapping that out from a journey perspective, ultimately to get to the fourth pillar, which is the outcome. Did we help drive behavior change? Did we drive administrative cost savings for the planner partner? Did we improve the patient or member experience? And so those are really the four key components where we leverage technology, but ultimately to solve those big problems around the closing gaps in care, driving medication adherence, et cetera.
Yeah, you sort of answered my next question, which is more of a devil's advocate question. But who really cares about patient engagement anyway? Your typical typical patient or even provider would say, the health plan doesn't want, they would kind of want to keep me away. I don't spend money. I leave them alone. And you're like the guy in the 20s who never goes to the doctor. That's my favorite kind of customer, right? They're satisfied because they're not doing anything, and I'm collecting all the premiums. But I mean, who cares about patient engagement, really?
Yeah, I do for one, right? I
Okay.
know you do
Yeah.
ultimately, right? And then health plans, providers, they really do. And I think that's the misnomer is that health plans aren't as trusted as they really should be. And this is coming from a guy that lived inside of a health plan for 15 years, is these are really compassionate, caring people who are trying to, get you to the services that you need, make you aware of those different products and services that they're offering, whether it's behavioral health, whether it's, new, FSA services, commercial, Medicaid, Medicare. They really want you to engage in those services because it's sort of a long game, right? Is if we can engage people now, we can get them into the preventive services and screenings. They're going to reduce costs long term. So they're absolutely focused on cost savings, but it's on a much longer sort of continuum versus sort of claim by claim by claim. And so, the way to think about it is a broader sort of population approach is if they can keep the broader population healthy within their membership pool, then they'll ultimately keep those claims costs down. So, and it's neat. I mean, it's a really thoughtful group of people that I think are, driving the right behaviors as much as possible.
You have a big emphasis in the company about the unique approach to engagement for each individual. And so I'll give you another, you're getting the sense, I give you a few devil's advocate questions here, but
Sure.
I think about, sometimes I've seen these things like a personalized nutrition program or something like that, and I say, like, does it always just recommend the broccoli, and stay away from the French fries? I mean, how much of a difference is there across different characteristics like age, sex, health status, culture, race, ethnicity, language? All these are very, they're a big deal. But on the other hand, is it still sort of the same basic kinds of things? How much individualization and real customization does there need to be?
Yeah, you hit the word, which was tailoring, right? And so we want to really understand the population, in much more than a segmentation strategy. I think a lot of us have seen the data around zip code as, one of the biggest determinants of health and health outcomes. That's absolutely true. I think in most of our data, we look at race, we look at gender, we look at other factors. There are really two that stand out of the sort of determinants that are really around knowledge and education is a factor in sort of where are people in the continuum. That's a huge factor to access and really understanding healthcare where people aren't prepared or educated to sort of tackle those. So they just don't engage. And so that's why one of those core pillars for us is knowledge, where we bring people in, we actually have, health streaming information. So you can go in, you can take a course, or if you say you may, not be, able to afford it, we may provide services around financial education support. Again, linking to the things that are sort of most relevant for you to get the learning and the care that you need. And then the other one is financial, is that really helping people understand what the cost components are, the transparency components. And that's really one of the biggest barriers that we're seeing to people engaging, in this world. Language, other factors I think are absolutely material. We do see, a tremendous lift in like our kind of creative, the photo novella or story-based messaging, where you get a text message and actually have stories and images. That's very common in a lot of Latin American countries. We see actually engagement almost 3-to-1 for Spanish speakers and other, non-English speakers in some of those channels compared to English speakers. And so, those are the couple of factors that I think we see the most lift, and that's primarily around SMS messaging, secure messaging, and even outbound voice, where they're not necessarily engaging in those channels. We service about 22 to 23 million Medicaid members, which are those underserved, population today, is where we're getting a lot of those data and a lot of those insights from. But I think you're really keen to sort of highlight that factor, and that we are seeing some key elements stand out much more than others.
Conversational AI is a really impressive technology. And at the same time, just speaking for myself, when I encounter such a technology, I usually don't like it. It almost never answers the question that I have. And then even when it breaks over into a chat with somebody, I would say pretty much invariably I end up having to have a phone call, and not even a regular chat works. Now, you are clearly bringing in some other components, and also some of what you're trying to do on engagement lends itself more to the conversational AI. But I'm just thinking about it from my own standpoint,
Sure,
and
sure.
it's not something I think I would embrace.
Yeah, I think where it lends itself really well to healthcare, is one, it increases the ability to get that access question and sort of reach, to many, many more consumers where they don't want to wait on hold. They've got sort of service challenges potentially, at scale, and that's been exacerbated by sort of the events of the last few years that I think are playing into that. And so it plays a really good front line sort of, first line of defense and sort of first line of engagement for a lot of health plans and providers out there. What I think that we do that's really unique in that is that the initial engagement where we're connecting with you, we're allowing for you to share information, building the dialogue, and we're storing that back as a consumer 360. So when you highlight, David, if maybe it's a financial challenge you're having with your, picking up your medications, the next time we go to engage you, we know that already, right? And so, we know that as sort of a qualifying event where a lot of the AI platforms look at each conversation in a discrete topic. So if you came back 5 minutes later and asked the same question, it's going to run through the same process. And we're trying to build knowledge about you as a partner, so that when we engage you, we again continue to get smarter as we sort of step up the scale through that. And so the second component to that is the natural language understanding, which is really just allowing people to freely, open-ended responses. And so they can say things like, hey, can you move my appointment to next Thursday? Or can you reschedule it to next week? And then we have to say, well, what day is next week? And you start to build the conversational approach to that. But in all of our scenarios, we allow for the fallback that you mentioned, which is to a live agent to have a one-to-one chat, but again, keeping it in the same channel that they started in. So
that sounds fair. And I think you highlighted that the technology's gotten better, and also sort of the human side of customer service has gotten worse over the last couple of years. I was just before our interview on hold with a financial institution. I'll just name it, Vanguard, where I think I'm an important customer, and usually they pick up the phone and answer it right away. And this is a transaction that can only be done on the phone. And I was on hold for an hour and 40 minutes. And I definitely would have considered a chat, if it were possible. So you have that working for you as well.
And I think that's what's probably been a bit of the shift, right? Is that when people want convenience, they want the ability to, sit on the couch still, stay on the phone, watch their show, be able to message back and forth, and not have to be on hold and work through those. So I think you're right. I think there's some market factors that have made it much more convenient than it was, in previous years. Absolutely.
Now, everybody talks about the kind of challenges of mental health. For the last couple of years, I've seen it certainly, among high school students, among people that have become, isolated and so on. But I think it's widespread. Clearly, behavioral health is one of the things that you focus on. Have you seen a shift, and how have you helped to address that? What are plans trying to do, and how are you helping them?
We have, and it's a great call out. And I think, it shows the sort of maturity and understanding that you have in the marketplace here, because so many programs, whether a health plan, almost all of them today have a mental or behavioral health component as part of the plan. And the ability for us to sort of identify through that conversational platform when there may be a need that someone is either feeling stressed or depressed. We've done a lot of work around social isolation, helping people through the last couple of years through those stressful times, and allowing for them to say, well, what are you doing to reduce stress? What are the things and mechanisms? And when people sort of hit a certain tipping point or scale, we can connect them back to the services within their plans, where they then may get enrolled into a mental or behavioral health program. One of our clients, Magellan RX and Magellan Behavioral Health, I applaud, who was one of the first to get out there and really leverage some of the digital channels to create the ability for people just to chat, just to text in and have that dialogue and that conversation one-to-one with a therapist where they may not have had access to those services before. And they stood up a program with us really quickly to offer those services at no cost to first responders. And so just really proud of them, I think, for getting out there and supporting the market over the last few years.
We started off talking about your upbringing and the house building and so on, and what you learned from that. Just noticed, looking at your background, it seems you're involved in a few volunteer activities now, and I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the things that you're doing, and also if you bring some of those things into kind of the culture of the company and involve people as well.
Oh, thank you, David, for the call out. We have, and I give a lot of credit to my wife and my children for helping to drive that, and I think has been something that my parents really believed in giving back. My wife's a big advocate in National Charity League. I support Boys Teen Charity. It's just two where we keep our kids very active. My daughter alone in hours were over 250 volunteer hours for self last year, in food banks and other services, really across, Southern California and Utah. And then From a work perspective, we've done a lot. We actually created a team internally in our company, is about 150 individuals, soon growing, and I'll maybe highlight that just a little bit. And we supported 5 families from an adoptive family this year. We did a toy drive, and I wish I could share the pictures with you of just
Yeah,
the immense amount of toys and clothes and support beds, mattresses, everything that was shipped to our office. And so while we've been working virtually, we used our office as basically a storage building for a
great.
while to have all these products shipped in, and just a fabulous team in our HR department, our culture team, who helped organize and pull that together, and then work through delivery, which will happen over this next week too. And so it's an important part, because I think as we are connecting, we're servicing health plan members across the United States, and a lot of these are underserved individuals. And so as we see the messaging that's coming back, the challenges that they're having, gives us the ability to sort of personally connect around these things too. And so it is a big part of the purpose and the culture of our team.
Now, do you have time to read any books, and are there any that you would recommend, if so?
A little bit. I am very much a magazine or online skimmer. I will absolutely, take full credit for that. One that I'm actually just reading again with, a group of team members. We have a leadership group that we put together every quarter, and it's called Our Iceberg is Melting. And so this is an old book, John Cotter, which is basically a cartoon about penguins. And
Yeah,
so it's something that we really look at every quarter as a team. But for those that haven't heard of it, it's a great book about change management. And so it uses a really practical and kind of fun example to talk through how companies change and how companies evolve. And as a startup company, right, and sort of moving through, we've gone through Series A, Series B, Series C, et cetera, growing from 6 associates to over 150. Change happens all the time, right? As was stated by Mark Twain, is that the only thing constant is change, right? So that's been something that's been in our culture, and we want to prepare people for that. And I think that even goes back to your point back on upbringing, is that, things are going to change in our marketplace. You have to be okay with it. And the faster that we sort of understand and accept it, the faster we can develop a plan and a strategy on how to execute successfully there.
great. Well, Chris Nicholson, CEO and co-founder of mPulse Mobile, thank you for joining me today on the HealthBiz podcast.
Thank you, David. Appreciate the time.
You've been listening to the HealthBiz podcast with me, David Williams, president of Health Business Group. I conduct in-depth interviews with leaders in healthcare business and policy. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite service. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe on your second and third favorite services as well. There's more good stuff to come, and you won't want to miss an episode. If your organization is seeking strategy consulting services in healthcare, check out our website, healthbusinessgroup.com.